Well, here is that um, here's going venturing into I think it's China. Um, I didn't explore. I explored the outer parts of the city, so here's going to be the inner parts. And the last two videos, I just had this I Am Legend book going. I'll just continue on with it. Do I not have any loadable games? Why is this not working?
But when I grow up, I want to be a vampire like that guy. Why, bless you, hon. Of course you shall. The whiskey gurgled into the glass. He grimaced a little at the pain in his hand and shifted the bottle to his left hand. He sat down and sipped. Let the jagged edge of sobriety be now dulled, he thought. Let the crumbly balance of clear vision be expunged. But post-haste. I hate him. Gradually, the room shifted on its gyroscopic center and wove and undulated about his chair. A pleasant haze, fuzzy at the edges, took over sight. He looked at the glass, at the record player. He let his head flop from side to side. Outside, they prowled and muttered and giggled. Poor vampire, he thought. Poor little cusses, pussyfoot round my house. So thirsty, so all forlorn. A thought. He raised a forefinger that wavered before his eyes. Friends, I come before you to discuss the vampire, a minority element if ever there was one, and there was one. But to concision, I will sketch out the basis for my thesis, which thesis is this. Vampires are prejudiced against. The keynote of minority prejudice is this. They are loathed because they are feared. Thus, he made himself a drink, a long one.
Kincaid.
At one time, the dark and middle-aged succinct.
Go to the parking garage, Kincaid.
He was anathema, and still remains anathema. Society hates him without ration. But are his needs any more shocking than the needs of other animals and men? Are his deeds more outrageous than the deeds of a parent who drained the spirit from his child? The vampire may foster quickened heartbeats and levitate hair, but is he worse than the parent who gave to society a neurotic child who became a politician? Is he worse than the manufacturer who set up belated foundations with the money he made by handing bombs and guns to suicidal nationalists? Is he worse than the distiller who gave bastardized grain juice to stultify further the brains of those who, sober, were incapable of a progressive thought? Nay, I apologize for this calumny. I nip the brood that feeds me. Is he worse than the publisher who filled ubiquitous racks with lust and death wishes? Really now, search your soul, Neville. Is the vampire so bad? All he does is drink blood. Why then this unkind prejudice, this thoughtless bias? Why cannot the vampire live where he chooses? Why must he seek out hiding places where none can find him out? Why do you wish him destroyed? Ah, see, you have turned the poor guileless innocent into a haunted animal. He has no means of support, no measures for proper education. He has not the voting franchise. No wonder he is compelled to seek out a predatory nocturnal existence. Robert Neville grunted a surly grunt. Sure, sure, he thought. But would you let your sister marry one? He shrugged. You got me there, buddy. You got me there. The music ended. The needle scratched back and forth in the black leaves. He sat there, feeling a chill creeping up his legs. That's what was wrong with drinking too much. He became immune to drunken delights. There was no solace in liquor. Before he got happy, he collapsed. Already the room was straightening out. The sounds outside were starting to nibble at his eardrums. Come out, Neville. His throat moved and a shaking breath passed his lips. come out. The women were out there, their dresses open or taken off, their flesh waiting for his touch, their lips waiting for my blood. My blood! As if it were someone else's hand, he watched his whitened fist rise up slowly, shuddering, to dry down on his leg. The pain made him suck in a breath of the house's stale air. Garlic, everywhere the smell of garlic. In his clothes and in the furniture and in his food and even in his drink, add garlic and soda. His mind rattled out the attempted joke. He lurched up and started pacing. What am I going to do now? Go through the routine again? I'll save you the trouble. Reading, drinking, soundproof the house, the women, the lustful, bloodthirsty, naked women flaunting their hot bodies at him. No, not hot. A shuddering whine wrenched up through his chest and throat. God damn them! What were they waiting for? Did they think he was going to come out and hand himself over? Maybe I am. Maybe I am. He actually found himself jerking off the crossbar from the door. Come in, girls. I'm coming. Wet your lips now. Outside, they heard the bar being lifted, and a howl of anticipation sounded in the night. Spinning, he drove his fists one after the other into the wall until he cracked the plaster and broke his skin. Then he stood there, trembling helplessly, his teeth chattering. After a while it passed. He put the bottle back across the door and went into the bedroom. He sank down in the bed and fell back on the pillow of the room. His left hand beat once, feebly, on the bedspread. Oh, God, he thought. How long? How long? Chapter 4. The alarm never went off because he'd forgotten to set it. He slept soundly and motionlessly, his body like cast iron. When he finally opened his eyes, it was 10 o'clock. With a disgusted muttering, he struggled up and dropped his legs over the side of the bed. Instantly, his head began throbbing, as if his brains were trying to force their way through his skull. He thought. That's all I need. He pushed himself up to the broom and stumbled into the bathroom, threw water in his face and splashed some over his head. No good, his mind complained. No good. I still feel like hell. In the mirror, his face was gaunt, bearded, and very much like the face of a man in his 40s. Love, your magic spell is everywhere. Remaining, the words flashed across his brain like red sheets in a wind. He walked slowly into the living room and opened the front door. A curse fell thickly from his lips at the sight of the woman crumpled across the sidewalk. He started to tighten angrily, but it made his head drop too much and he had to let it go. I'm sick, he thought. The sky was gray and bare. Great, he thought. Another day stuck in this boarded-up rat hole. He slammed the door viciously, then winced, groaning at the brain-stabbing noise. Outside, he heard the rest of the mirror fall out and shatter on the porch cement. Oh, great. His lips contorted back into a white twist of flesh. 2 cups of burning black coffee only made his stomach feel worse. He put down the cup and went into the living room. To hell with it, he thought. I'll get drunk again. But the liquor tasted like turpentine, and with a rasping snarl, he flung the glass against the wall and stood watching the liquor run down onto the rug. Hell, I'm running out of glasses. The thought irritated him, while breath struggled into his nostrils and out again, faltering bursts. He sank down on the couch and sat there, shaking his head slowly. It was no use. They'd beaten him. The black bastards had beaten him. That restless feeling again. The feeling as if he were expanding and the house were contracting, and any second now he'd go bursting through its frame in an explosion of wood, plaster, and brick. He got up and moved quickly to the door, his hands shaking. On the lawn, he stood sucking in great lungfuls of the wet morning air, his face turned away from the house he hated. But he hated the other houses around there too, and he hated the pavement and the sidewalks and the lawns and everything that was on Cimarron Street. He kept building up, and suddenly he knew he had to get out of there. Cloudy day or not, he had to get out of there. He locked the front door, unlocked the garage, and dragged up the thick door on its overhead hinges. He didn't bother putting down the door. I'll be back soon, he thought. I'll just go away for a while. He backed the station wagon quickly down the driveway, jerked it around, and pressed down hard on the accelerator, heading for Compton Boulevard. He didn't know where he was going. He went around the corner doing 40 and jumped back to 65 before he'd gone another block. The car reached forward under his foot, and he kept the accelerator on the floor, forced down by a rigid leg. His hands were like carved ice on the wheel, and his face was the face of a statue. At 89 miles an hour, he shot down the lightless, empty boulevard, one roaring sound in the great stillness. Things rank and gross in nature possess it nearly, he thought, as he walked slowly across the cemetery lawn. The grass was so high that the weight of it had bent it over, and it crunched under his heavy shoes as he walked. There was no sound but that of his shoes, and the now senseless singing of birds. Once I thought they sang because everything was right with the world. Robert Neville thought. I know now I was wrong. They sing because they're feeble-minded. He had raced 6 miles, The gas pedal pressed to the floor before he realized where he was going. It was strange the way his mind and body had kept its secret from his consciousness. Consciously, he'd known only that he was sick and depressed and had to get away from the house. He didn't know he was going to visit Virginia. But he'd driven there directly and as fast as he could. He parked at the curb and entered through the rusty gate, and now his shoes were pressing and crackling through the foot grass. How long had it been since he'd come here? It must have been years ago. He wished he'd brought flowers, but then he hadn't realized he was coming here until he was almost at the gate. His lips pressed together as an old song fell in again. Why couldn't he have Kathy there too? Why had he followed so blindly, listened to these fools who set up their stupid regulations during the plague? If only she could be there, lying across from her mother. Don't start that again, he ordered himself. Drawing closer to the crypt, he stiffened as he noticed that the iron door was slightly ajar. Oh no, he thought. He broke into a run across the wet grass. If they went at her, I'll burn down the city, he vowed. I swear to God, I'll burn it to the ground if they touched her. He flung open the door, and it clanged against the marble wall with a hollow, echoing sound. His eyes moved quickly to the marble base on which the sealed casket rested. The tension sagged. He drew in breath again. It was still there, untouched. Then, as he started in, he saw the man lying in one corner of the crypt, body curled up on the cold floor. With a grunt of rage, Robert Neville rushed at the body, and grabbing the man's coat in taut fingers, he dragged him across the floor and flung him violently out onto the grass. The body rolled onto its back, the white face pointing at the sky. Robert Neville went back into the crypt, chest rising and falling with harsh movements. Then he closed his eyes and stood with his palms resting on the cover of the casket. I'm here, he thought. I'm back. Remember me? He threw out the flowers he'd brought the time before and cleared away the few leaves that had blown in because the door had been opened. Then he sat down beside the casket and rested his forehead against its cold metal side. Silence held in its cold and gentle hands. If I could die now, he thought, peacefully, gently, without a tremor or a crying out. If I could be with her. If I could believe I would be with her. His fingers tightened slowly, and his head sank forward on his chest. Take me where you are. A tear, crystal, fell across his motionless hand. He had no idea how long he'd been there. After a while, though, even the deepest sorrow faltered, even the most penetrating despair lost its scalpel range. The blasphemous curse, he thought, to go near even to the whip. He straightened up and stood. Still alive, he thought, heart beating senselessly, veins running without point, bones and muscles and tissue all alive and functioning with no purpose at all. A moment longer he stood looking down at the casket, then he turned away with a sigh and left, closing the door behind him quietly, so as not to disturb her sleep. He'd forgotten about the man. He almost tripped over him now, stepping aside with a muttered curse and starting past the body. Then, abruptly, he turned back. What's this? He looked down incredulously at the man. The man was dead. Really dead. But how could that be? The change had occurred so quickly. Yet already the man looked and smelled as though he'd been dead for days. His mind began churning with a sudden excitement. Something had killed the vampire. Something brutally effective. The heart had not been touched. No garlic had been present. And yet, it came, seemingly without effort. Of course. The daylight. A bolt of self-accusation struck him. To know for 5 months that they remained indoors by day, and never once to make the connection. He closed his eyes, appalled by his own stupidity. The rays of the sun. The infrared and ultraviolet. It had to be them. But why? Damn it! Why did he know anything about the effects of sunlight on the human system? Another thought. That man had been one of the true vampires, the living dead. Would sunlight have the same effect on those who were still alive?
Day of the Living Dead.
Months made him break into a run for the station wagon. As the door slammed shut beside him, he wondered if he should have taken away the dead man. Would the body attract others? Would they invade the crypt? No, they wouldn't come near the casket anymore. It was sealed with guards. Besides, the man's blood was dead now. Again, his thoughts broke off as he reached to another conclusion. The sun's rays must have done something to their blood. Was it possible, then, that all things bore relation to the blood?
Who is this UV rays?
He burned some of his left hand. He didn't see how. And yet, he had to do a lot of reading, a lot of research. The practice was needed. He'd been planning for a long time to do it, but lately it seemed as if he'd forgotten it altogether. Now this new idea started to desire again. He started the car and raced up the street, turning off into a residential section and pulling up before the first house he came to. He ran up the path over the front door, but it was locked and he couldn't force it in. With an impatient growl, he ran to the next house. The door was open, and he ran to the stairs through the darkened living room and jumped up the carpeted stairs 2 at a time. He found the woman in the bedroom. Without hesitation, he jerked back the covers and grabbed her by the wrists. She grunted as her body hit the floor, and he heard her making tiny sounds in his throat as he dragged her into the hall and started down the stairs. As he pulled her across the living room, she started to move. Her hands closed over his wrists, and her body began to twist and flop on the rug. Her eyes were still closed, but she gasped and muttered, and her body kept trying to rise out of his grip. Her dark nails dug into his flesh. He tore out of her grasp with a snarl and dragged her the rest of the way by her hair. Usually, he felt a twinge when he realized that, but for some affliction he didn't understand, these people were the same as he. But now, an experimental fever had seized him, and he could nothing else. Even
Nothing
so,
wrong with me.
strangled sound of falling
Nothing wrong with
on
me.
the sidewalk outside. She lay twisting helplessly on the sidewalk, hands opening and closing, lips drawn back from red-spotted teeth. Robert Neville watched her tensely. His throat moved. It wouldn't last, a feeling of callous brutality. He bit his lips as he watched her. All right, she's suffering, he argued with himself. But she's one of them, and she'd kill me gladly if she got the chance. You've got to look at it that way. It's the only way. Teeth clenched. He stood there and watched her die. In a few minutes, she stopped moving, stopped muttering, and her hands uncurled slowly, like white blossoms on the cement. Robert Neville crouched down and felt more practical. Right as mine. Already her flesh was growing cold. He straightened up with a thin smile. It was treatment. He didn't need the stakes. After all this time, he finally found a better method. Then his breath caught. But how did he know the woman was being dead? How could he know until sunset? The thought filled him with a new, more restless anger. Why did each question blight the answers before it? He thought about it as he sat drinking the can of tomato juice taken from the supermarket behind which he was parked. How was he going to know? He couldn't very well stay with the woman until sunset came. Take her home, you fool. Again his eyes closed, and he felt a shudder of irritation go through him. He was missing all the obvious answers today. Now he'd have to go all the way back and find her, and he wasn't even sure where the house was. He started the motor and pulled away from the parking lot, glancing down at his watch. 3 o'clock. Plenty of time to get back before they came. He eased the gas pedal down, and the station wagon pulled ahead faster. It took him about a half hour to relocate the house. The woman was still in the same position on the sidewalk. Putting on his gloves, Neville lowered the back gate of the station wagon and walked over to the woman. As he walked, he noticed her figure. No, don't start that again, for God's sake. He dragged the woman back to the station wagon and tossed her in. Then he closed the gate and took off his gloves. He held up the watch and looked at it. 3 o'clock. Plenty of time. He jerked up the watch and held it against his ears, his heart suddenly jumping. The watch had stopped. Chapter 5. His fingers shook as he turned the ignition key. His hands gripped the wheel rigidly as he made a tight U-turn and started back toward Gardena. What a fool he'd been. It must have taken at least an hour to reach the cemetery. He must have been in the crypt for hours, then going to get that woman, going to the market, drinking the tomato juice, going back to get the woman again. What time was it? Fool! Cold fear poured through his veins at the thought of them all waiting for him at his house. Oh my God. And he left the garage door open, the gasoline, the equipment, the cheerleader. A groan cut itself off in his throat as he jammed the gas pedal to the floor and the small station wagon leaped ahead, the speedometer needle fluttering, then moving steadily past the 65 mark, the 70, the 75. What if they were already waiting for him? How could he possibly get in the house? He forced himself to be calm. He mustn't go to pieces now. He had to keep himself in check. He'd get in. Don't worry, he'll get inside, he told himself. But he didn't see how. One hand ran nervously through his hair. This is fine, commented his mind. You go to all that trouble to preserve your existence, and then one day you just don't come back in time. Shut up. His mind snapped back at itself. Like he could have killed himself for forgetting to wind his watch the night before. Don't bother killing yourself, his mind reflected. Don't be glad to do it for you. Suddenly, he realized he was almost weak from hunger. The small amount of canned meat eaten with the tomato juice had done nothing to alleviate hunger. The silent streets flew past, and he kept looking from side to side to see if any of them were appearing in the doorways. It seemed as if it were already getting dark, but that could have been his imagination. It couldn't be that way. It couldn't be. He'd just gone hurtling past the corner of Western and Compton when he saw the man come running out of the building and shout at him. His heart was contracted in an icy hand as the man's cry fluttered in the air behind the car.
Western and
Compton? He couldn't get any more speed out of
Compton?
the station wagon, and now his mind began torturing him with visions of one of the tires going, the station wagon veering, leaping the curb and crashing into a house. His lips started to shake, and he jammed them together to stop them. His hands on the wheel felt numb. He had to slow down at the corner of Cinnamon. Out of the corner of an eye, he saw a man come rushing out of a house and start chasing the car. Then, as he turned the corner with a screech of clinging tires, he couldn't hold back the gasp. They were all in front of his house, waiting. A sound of helpless terror filled his throat. He didn't want to die. He might have thought about it, even contemplated it, but he didn't want to die. Not like this. Now he saw them all turn their white faces at the sound of the motor. Some more of them came running out of the open garage, and his teeth ground together in impotent fury. What a stupid, brainless way to die. Now, he saw them start running straight toward the station wagon, a line of them across the street. And suddenly, he knew he couldn't stop. He pressed down on the accelerator, and in a moment the car went plowing through them, knocking 3 of them aside like 10 pins. He felt the car frame jolt as it struck the bodies. Their screaming white faces went flashing by his window, their cries chilling his blood. Now they were behind, and he saw in the rearview mirror that they were all pursuing him. A sudden plan caught hold in his mind, and impulsively he slowed down, even braking, until the speed of the car fell to 30, then 20 miles an hour. He looked back and saw them gleaming, saw their grayish white faces approaching, their dark eyes fastened to his car, to him. Suddenly, he twitched with shock as a snarl sounded nearby, and jerking his head around, he saw the crazed face of Ben Portman beside the car. Instinctively, his foot jammed down on the gas pedal, but his other foot slipped off the clutch, and with a neck-snapping jolt, the station wagon jumped forward and stalled. Sweat broke out on his forehead as he lunged forward feverishly to press the button. Ben Portman clawed in at him. With a snarl, he shoved the cold white hand aside. Neville! Neville! Ben Portman reached in again, his hands like claws cut from ice. Again, Neville pushed aside the hand and jabbed at the starter button, his body shaking helplessly. Behind, he could hear them all screaming excitedly as they came closer to the car. The motor coughed into life again as he felt Ben Portman's long nails rake across his cheek. Neville! The pain made his hand jerk into a rigid fist, which he drove into Cortland's face. Cortland went flailing back onto the pavement as the gears cocked and the station wagon jolted forward, picking up speed. One of the others caught up and leaped at the rear of the car. For a minute he held on, and Robert Neville could see his ashen face glaring insanely through the back window. Then he jerked the car over toward the curb, swerved sharply, and shook the man off. The man went running across the lawn, arms ahead of him, and smashed violently into the side of a house. Robert Neville's heart was pounding so heavily now, it seemed as if it would drive through his chest walls. Breath shuddered in him, and his flesh felt numb and cold. He could feel the trickle of blood on his cheek, but no pain. Hastily, he wiped it off with one shaking hand. Now, he spun the station wagon around the corner, turning right. He kept looking at the rearview mirror, then looking ahead. He went the short walk to Hoss Street and turned right again. What if they cut through the yards and walked his way? He slowed down a little until they came swarming around the corner like a pack of wolves. Then, he pressed down on the accelerator. He had to take the chance that they were all following him. Would some of them guess what he was trying? He shoved down the gas pedal all the way and the station wagon jumped forward, racing up the block. He wheeled it around the corner at 50 miles an hour, gunned up the short block to Cimarron, and turned right again. His breath caught. There was no one in sight on his lawn. There was still a chance then. He'd have to let the station wagon go, though. There was no time to put it in the garage. He jerked the car to the curb and shoved the door open. As he raced around the edge of the car, he heard the billowing cry of their approach around the corner. He'd have to take a chance on locking the garage. If he didn't, they might destroy the generator. They couldn't have had time to do it already. His footsteps pounded up the driveway to the garage. Neville! His body jerked back as Cortman came lunging out of the dark shadows of the garage. Cortman's body drove into his and almost knocked him down. He felt the cold, powerful hands clamp on his throat and smelled the fetid breath clouding over his face. The two of them went reeling back toward the sidewalk, and the white-fanged mouth went darting down at Robert Neville's throat. Abruptly, he jerked up his right fist and felt it drive into Cortman's throat. He heard the choking sound in Cortman's throat. Up the block, the first of them came rushing and screaming around the corner. With a violent movement, Robert Neville grabbed Cortman by his long, greasy hair.
All for now.